up, guys? Lord Nollan here, and today we're going to talk about the true history of the Void Century.
You my pretty loudest, you my pretty loudest, like you my pretty loudest.
So, I was watching a teching video, and I heard what he was saying about like the different eras in time in real life history where Oda could have drawn his how should I say, his inspiration from. What if the celestial dragons were actually the heroes in the Void Century? Let's say that the reason that they erased that century isn't because they did a bunch of bad stuff, but because of some of the secrets that they didn't want the world to know that happened during that time. If you stick it out, I feel like this will be a really good, this one's gonna be a really good one. So, my first part of this theory is that all of the moons in One Piece were once inhabited by all of the races in One Piece that weren't humans. Long legs, long arm, long neck, three eye, minks, giants, all these people were, okay, I'm not gonna say all these people were on the same moon, but there's a lot of different moons, and I feel like they were all on a different moon, and at one point all these moons were inhabitable. It was more like a bunch of planets circling each other instead of a bunch of moons circling one planet. Now, at some point in time, these moon races had crazy technology. I'm talking the ability to fly in space and breathe and no oxygen atmospheres between moons. They had automatons. They had all different types of power sources, all these things. And of all these races from these moons, which would have been planets at the time, there were the Lunarians, who were the strongest of all of them. I think fishmen and ancient giants were the two races of like speaking beings that were actually on the planet with humans. And humanity was probably always at odds with these two races, fighting over whatever they were fighting for, whether it be land or control of the planet, whatever. And long storied history there. Now, these interplanetary beings, at some point, either they had a war against each other and something happened, like Devil Fruit War up in space, and they somehow ended up destroying all their planets. And the Lunarians, being the strongest of these people, gathered these people, and as a collective, they all descended from their moons with their armies in tow and went down to the blue sea, which is where One Piece takes place. That's what people from the sky and above call the One Piece world, the blue sea. And at first when they got there, maybe they landed in a spot where there wasn't necessarily other inhabitants, like in the clouds and stuff like that. The clouds were thick enough to house some of them, so those would be where the sky people settled. And at first, it was okay for them, so they didn't never descend. They never went down all the way. And the few that decided to landed on Jaya, and that's where the sky people decided to settle. They built this great city of gold and all this stuff like that, because maybe Jaya had a lot of it and they knew how to manipulate it because they're technologically advanced. So they built this great city on Jaya, and that was where the sky people's civilization ended up. And then over time, other races found other places to settle. Like the giants, maybe they found some place and they named it Elbath, and that's where they decided to settle. And then Long Arm Tribe and Long Leg Tribe, Long Neck Tribe, they all found an island. They settled there. The Minks found So, and they settled there. All these races slowly started finding places to live. But as time went on, humanity may or may not have been getting in the way of some of them finding a place. Like the races that are no longer in existence, or the races that are rare to none of them alive, they ended up in places where humanity had already settled, and they went to war with these people in order to claim land that they needed for their race. So like the Three Eyes, like Long Legs, Long Neck, Long Arm, all these guys had to go to war to find their place. The Lunarians didn't necessarily have to go to war, but they were probably the leaders of these people. So they, like, whenever they went to war, they went to war with whatever human country or kingdom or whatever was on that island, attacked them. And there's devil fruits involved, because all these people from up in the sky had devil fruits, and there weren't no seas to deal with, so they didn't have to worry about the swimming issue back on their planets. But now that they're in the blue sea, that's a huge weakness for them. So that's how humanity slowly started realizing, like, okay, we need some sort of weapons in order to take these people on. And as time went on, the 20 kings, as they struggled against these interplanetary beings, came together and was like, okay, so what can we do? Like, what do we do to stop these people from taking over the entire planet? And all these kings are from different areas, because there's celestial dragons that were kings in every sea, like the north, south, east, and west blues all have a different family from the celestial dragons that were there. The Grand Lions got a bunch of them. So all of them are from all around the world. They came together in what would probably have been the very first reverie. And they were like, man, these guys, these Lunarians and all these other like groups that came down from the sky are really messing us up. They have robots, they can fly, they got powers. Like, what are we gonna do? Like, how do we take these guys on? And maybe at that point, the ancient giants and the fishmen became allies to these kings. Not part of the 20 kings, but allies. And that big hat, that big straw hat in Merijois is probably a testament to the fact that at some point the celestial dragons cooperated with a giant race, which would probably have been the ancient giants or the Onis, like the ogres or something like that, because those guys were probably the strongest of the beings on the planet at the time. They could walk through the ocean without having to worry about drowning. They were immensely powerful. They were towering over people, and they would probably combat these other races relatively easier than the humans would. And then the fishmen, being sea people, were able to take on devil fruit users because their weakness is the ocean. And so they took on these devil fruit users with the power of the sea at their disposal. And once they were in the water, it was game over. And because these devil fruits reincarnate when a user dies, a lot of the devil fruits that from the initial battles were spread across the world, and maybe they started finding them in their kingdoms and were like, hey, this is a weird fruit, and they would eat it, and they would gain the powers and the knowledge of how to use the powers. And they were like, yo, like, this is a fruit from those people that are from the moons and the sky and stuff. And they slowly but surely started gaining more and more powers and using it to fight against the interplanetary interlopers, the invaders that were coming to the blue sea to take over. And they were like, so what happens with these fruits when these people die is they spawn somewhere on the planet. And because these people don't have control of the rest of the world, we need to make a network so that we can find these devil fruits and use them against these guys. And so they slowly connected the world together so that they could make it to where they could find these powerful fruits and use them in their war against these invaders. And as time went on, the invaders started going back to the people that had already settled and were like, hey, these guys are starting to beat us back. We need to get together and start taking them on. So they got involved in this large scale war. And the advantage of the invaders is they could still control the sky. They had wings, and there's nothing that these guys could do to get up into the sky unless maybe they got a specific devil fruit that allowed them to fly, which is rare. And those are super powerful devil fruits that would be hard to get from somebody that is on the other side. Like the phoenix fruit, the dragon fruit, the light fruit, like all these devil fruits that were able to fly, all of them are extremely powerful, immense strength. And the people that use them were probably efficient with them because they had them for a long period of time. So attacking these guys required the ability to be up in the sky. They had flying machines, they had flying people, and they had powerful devil fruits that could keep them in the sky. And so the 20 kings came together probably again and were like, well, how are we going to get them out of the sky? And that's when they got the idea, what if we started using dragons? Dragons can fly, dragons can breathe fire, dragons can take on these beings in the sky. They're immensely powerful, they're super big, we could ride on them even. And so they get on these dragons, they take on the people in the sky. Now they've got aerial defenses, they already have been able to travel the seas, and they have the fishmen, so they got superiority under the water. And they got the giants, the ancient giants, maybe the ogres. I don't know if they're the same race yet, but they've got these 3 super powerful ways of taking these guys on. But the Lunarians are still immensely powerful, and so they're at a stalemate now. At first, it was overwhelmingly in their favor, and their devil fruits sort of kind of closed the gap a little bit, and then their ability to fly on dragons, stalemate now. Now it's bodies are piling up, it's back and forth, and the fishmen have the ability for one of them to speak to these ancient sea creatures that everyone knows as sea kings and sea emperors. I think it's like the bigger ones. And so with this ability, they are able to conquer all of the seafaring interplanetary invaders, and they start taking over the oceans. And now they've divided their invaders amongst all the different islands that they had taken over, and the only people that could travel between them were the ones that could fly. So now all they've got to do is clear the islands of the people that have come from different planets, and they got to take on the people that can fly. And at some point in time during all this, I feel as though the Lunarians had conquered the red line, dividing the world, giving them a strategic advantage, so that they could send people to whatever sea that they needed to send them to, led by maybe Lunarian generals or whatever. And they were starting to gain the upper hand again. And at some point in time, maybe these Lunarians built Merigeois. And I think the Lunarians built Merigeois because if you look at it from a standpoint of this was built for humans, it's way too large for any celestial dragon to be in there. I have yet to see any celestial dragon that is not average human height. Not even a big human, like just average human height. I've yet to see anyone that isn't average human height. So why would they build such a large castle? I think that was built for the Lunarians because they are at least giant size. Not ancient giant size, but at least giant size. If you look at King's stature. So these guys have the ability to completely disperse themselves across the planet with immunity. There's no way that these guys are going to be able to stop them as long as they have Marijuana. So at some point, somewhere down the line, some scientific genius comes up with the weapon Pluton. Whatever the third weapon is, I can't remember exactly what the third weapon is, but like those two weapons that aren't Pluton were used on land and at sea, and then Pluton was used to take on whoever was in the sky. It was a giant weapon that could destroy things in the air. And so slowly but surely, Pluton was sent around the world to take out the Lunarians, and the other two were sent to control the sea and start slowly taking over the land. And in a last-ditch effort, the celestial dragons on their dragons, the 20 kings ascend to Marijuana with their armies and take on the Lunarians at their home base. And with Pluton in tow and all these dragons, they defeat the Lunarians, almost wiping out their race. I don't know if King is the last survivor or if they're just, Lunarians went back up or whatever, but they race as many of them as they can, and then without their Lunarian generals and their leaders, the other races go back to their, territories, and they keep them as much as they can away from the celestial dragon's influence. The 20 kings can't defeat all of them still to completion. They can't obliterate them. And somewhere in there comes a hero, Joy Boy, who ends the war. Now, how he ends it, we don't know. But at some point in time, Joy Boy comes and he ends the war, promising that all these other races can keep their land and stay there peacefully, and the 20 kings can have the rest of the world. So the new world is now controlled by these different entities, and certain places along the rest of the world, like under Marijuana and stuff like that, are taken by different groups from the moon planets. And these guys don't want anything to do with the world government, so they have to make their countries work. They can't spread out. Every now and then someone wanders off, like Apu, or some of the guys from the Coliseum and stuff like that, but that's years and years down the line. No one really leaves these places. And in that time, the 20 kings are like, all right, let's make sure that this can never happen again. So we're gonna make a government that governs the entire world of humanity. We'll keep all the other races at bay, and we will protect our kingdoms. And they claim Marijuana as their home. They've installed new kings to watch over their kingdoms, and they created the world government. And then over time, they didn't want people to know that these beings could come down from on high at any moment and try and lay waste to the world. So to keep people from panicking, they just erased that history altogether. They wouldn't allow it to be talked about or taught, and slowly over time, people forgot. Now, with great power comes usually corruption. And so, because of this, the celestial dragons over time forgot their mandate to protect the world and just kind of became tyrants over it. Their whims were now easily done because their word is law. They are above kings. They are now literally the emperors of the world. The government has to do what they say. They slowly implement law after law that is in their favor and is against other people. They tax the people to damn near poverty in most islands. And the only people that can stay in their influence is people that can pay. And so it creates a vacuum of power where nobles take hold over their countries and they cast out everybody else. That's where you get like the Gray Terminal and places like that. Every island has a poor section, but in this world, their poor section is increasingly worse every decade. It gets worse and worse. So the Void Century itself is the story of how the Celestial Dragons literally defended the world from a Lunarian invasion backed by all the other races of the moon. And how I believe this happened is because when you look at ancient writings in One Piece, there's always like the people that have the helmets and they got wings usually, but when you look up there, they got minks in space. They have minks up there, and they're space pirates. They got automatons that were inactive for many, many years. Oh, drop something. They got space pirates that are inactive for many, many years. They've got all these things that are technologically more advanced than anything on the planet, but the planets are dead. And I believe it's because all those races, except for a few outliers and the people that retreated back when they kind of stalemated or mostly lost, but like not entirely, those people left or abandoned the kingdoms and they went back up. And over time, they lost the ability to come down, or they lost the interest to come down because they were able to survive up there. People in the sky could survive up there. And so at some point in time, we're gonna find out that the Void Century is actually a history of how the world was actually defended by the Celestial Dragons, and then over time their power corrupted them and they became the tyrants that they were trying to defend the world from. And they erased the history to just make it seem like they were just always in power. Like they came into power by divine right. And so the Lunarians, I believe, would have been the leaders as the strongest race that isn't human. I believe they are the strongest race that isn't human. Now, Kaido is a freak of nature, like Big Mom. They just kind of spawned out of the blue. Every now and then, every race has its superhuman person. So that's just kind of what it is. Like Whitebeard, he was a human. Big Mom, she was a human. Like, these are two humans that are like freakishly powerful. And I believe that every now and then, every race has that person. Like Fisher Tiger, freakishly powerful, and he was a fishman. You know, like every one of them will have that person that is just like, okay, they were born at this time. They just like, you know, whatever. Odin, samurai, super strong. You know, Roger, he's part of the D clan, which we don't necessarily know exactly all of the will of D like that, but he's part of D clan and he was freakishly strong. Like, there's always outliers to strength in each of these like races, but as a whole, the Lunarians would probably have been the strongest race in all of One Piece. And so with them out of the way, the Celestial Dragons took over the entirety of the planet, and you know, obviously there's pockets of like that they don't own, but as a whole they own the planet. And that is what happened during the Void Century, in my theory. Like, the evidence, it's kind of all over the place. So like, that would honestly be like another video. Maybe I'll do like a part 2 to this, like where I tell you like, okay, this is why I think this, this is why I think that. But from everything that I've heard, whether it be from One Piece's actual canon, like manga or anime, or a theorist from the One Piece community like Tekken, King of Lightning, Brago the Ace, Joy Boy, you know, whatever, Morge, you know, O'Hara, whatever. From whatever it is, it's, you know, I've gathered all these things and put them together in one theory of what the Void Century could have been. And that being said, if you believe that I'm right, drop a comment, drop a like saying, you know, hey, this sounds like it could be a thing. If you don't believe I'm right, tell me what parts you don't agree with, or tell me you just don't agree with any of it. Like, all of it's bullshit. Just whatever you believe, comment down below, and just be nice to each other. Like, I'm okay with y'all arguing amongst yourselves in the comments, but be nice about it, okay? That being said, that's my theory. That's what I think happened during the Void Century. I will probably do another video showing evidence as to why I think these things. And Lord Nollan out.